Hi, I'm Doc Phineas, and welcome to my world on Doc Talk. So yes, many of you know me as that guy out there on Pawn Stars who can pretty much give provenance to anything that I see. And really, what you're seeing here in me, in Doc Phineas, is kind of like the islands of Hawaii. You know, like in Hawaii, you just see the tip of a volcano, right? But you don't see all the millions of years it took to create that volcanic tip, that paradise. So I think where I'm at right now in life is a paradise, but all of those years of struggle and creation and all the things that I did to get where I'm at in my 70s, that's all kind of underneath the water. So what I want to do in this series is share my life with you. And hopefully, maybe you'll gain some insight about your own life from seeing how I live and what I've been through in this great life. Really a fantastic life. But I've had to create it every step of the way. And the struggles, the pains, the amazing educational opportunities I had, and travel now in 180 countries, the 8 television reality shows that I'm on, and 65 movies in Hollywood, multiple PhDs in archaeology and antiquities, MCE in Masters in Civil Engineering, Bachelor, magna cum laude from Berkeley. All of that is all there. And I can just say that it's made the richest life for me in my 70s. Nobody really gives us a handbook, when it comes to life. Nobody really tells us how to live. But the path that I chose as a triple Aquarian was the path of freedom, the path of really, really loving my own thing, doing my own thing all through the 60s, 70s, music industry, in acting, in education, and teaching. The real Indiana Jones, going to all of these amazing, amazing archaeological sites around the world. And now on History Channel, my Nielsen's this past week were 40 million views in 180 countries, and I'm dubbed in 52 languages. So talk about exposure. I can't even walk down the street without people walking up to me and saying, Doc, one guy just from West Virginia stopped me on the strip, and he said, I'm not well educated. I'm just a regular guy. I'm an electrician, from West Virginia, but what I have learned from you being on Pawn Stars is phenomenal. And I love that, because the way I see myself on the History Channel is that my classroom just got bigger. It just got bigger. And if I can relate to people and they learn a little bit of something from the backside as I give provenance and identify an object on TV, I'm teaching history. And you walk away with maybe just a little bit more knowledge, more information on chronology, and you can look at things in your own collection and see the value of it. So welcome to Belmont Manor. Welcome to my world. Just want to share a little bit of what it's like day to day with Doc Phineas. So my days basically start here in the art room, and this room is my go-to room in Las Vegas when I really start missing Santa Fe. Just a lot of amazing artifacts here. This is an amazing painting. Probably should go to the Smithsonian by Red Hand. It's an absolute masterpiece of what it's like to be a Navajo in Monument Valley. Each one of the things, they're all very great collectible works of art in my museum here. But you can see this very large Kachina doll. This is like 4 feet tall. And this was created for me by the head Kosigi of the Taos Pueblo. Grandfather tell us good morning. And he's one of the most amazing Kachina doll makers in the world. And you could take a look at this. It's all intact. There it is, grandfather. And the owl Kachina. And the owl Kachina represents wisdom, represents great powers for the shaman. Your owl is your Buddha, your top intelligence. You can see all the beautiful beadwork, all the details. Everything is real, and everything has come from Taos Pueblo. There's many other cachinas here. This beautiful crow mother is very old, coming to me from 1885. That was a gift from Princess Caroline of the Hopi Nation. This is corn kachina, eagle dancer, and beautiful pieces of pottery by Sunflower, one of the greatest potters from San Ildefonso Pueblo. The throne chair in this room was the Vyasana of the great saint Sri Ananda Moima, and it's made of solid silver, which is now really, really tarnished. It was so hard to get that chair here from India. Like, took 6 months, and it had to be completely packed in sawdust. You can see here a war bonnet. That war bonnet was worn by Grandfather Tell Us Good Morning in Taos Pueblo, a gift to me, and it's completely trimmed in macaw feathers, and it goes with this incredible fan, which is the subject I wrote in 1998 called Cry of the Eagle, Call of the Wolf, where I told about the journey I had in shamanism, living among the Tewas of Taos, and how the incredible healings I went through, and the marvelous things that I learned about Native American shamanism with people working with me like Hamos Storm. I was with William S. Burroughs, the great beat poet of the 1960s. Allen Ginsberg came to stay with me in my home in Taos, and all the great artists of that time, Carl Hauser, R.C. Gorman, and with my personal medicine man, Marion Three Hawks. So this room is a reflection of the Santa Fe experience. And it's where I start my mornings. I come here and I have my morning chai, and I start most of my art projects here in this beautiful, beautiful space at Belmont Manor. And it's just so much fun. So started like every other day, and the first thing I do, of course, is that after an hour of yoga, an hour of qigong, I head right into my first art project of the day. And you can see here I'm working on it right now, and I'm very much into clothing as being wearable art, and the images I'm painting all come from the Southwest, from various shamans. And this is really cool guy. This guy is the Apache dancer of the crown dancer, and he is a healer, and they are always pictured next to a ceremonial fire and a flame in the light of the moon. They dance, jumping over rocks, jumping over the flames, and bring healing to the entire tribe. And you can see a really good Apache dancer right here. That's a crown dancer kachina, very old, and it was created by Harvey Beartrack for me, and in that Apache tradition of healing. So this character here, he's going to be the one who jumps over the flames, the healing flames. They appear in the middle of the night and perform a healing on the entire tribe. You can see he's holding 2 sticks, and those sticks have double crosses, and that's the dragonfly cross. Very, very endeared cross to the Pueblo Indians and to the Indians of the Southwest, because the friars brought those crosses from Spain originally, and the double cross in Spain and France represents the second wound of Christ, which was in his heart. And when Native Americans saw that, they felt it was dragonfly magic. So that's the reason why you'll see the double cross on many, many Native American things. They wear a black face mask with a scarf. Their identity is not to be known because they're basically, representatives of the gods who come down to dance around the ceremonial fire in order to bring healing to the tribe. And it's a subject in a lot of my paintings, and especially in a lot of my wearable art that I create like on a daily basis. So my new canvas is clothing, and I have decided I love the concept of art as fashion. And so I'm sort of doing that in my own way, considering that I spend so much time, in New Mexico. And I have to say, it's just a beautiful thing to wake up every day and spend my days in painting and art. I try to do at least a project a day, every single day. And then that's how I start my day. This one here is called Long Hair and Redbeard. That's a very powerful, healing Hopi kachina from the Walpi nation of Hopi. Back here I have the kachina doll. This one is deer, and that's deer dancers. Deers bring prosperity, food during the winter months. Very, very powerful kachina that they turn to and pray to in order to sustain the tribe. Up here I have white buffalo dancer, and I hand-painted the walls to look like petroglyphs in various archaeological sites that I'm working in. That's Eagle, and this is Morning Dancer who brings the rain. So I thought, wow, that's a very important kachina doll to bring to Nevada. And, it's interesting. Every time I bring him here from New Mexico, he kind of travels with me. When we go to New Mexico, it just rains and rains and rains. And then when I come back to Nevada, it sort of starts to rain mysteriously. So, these are very, very mystical kinds of things that exist when you study Native American religion, artifacts, archaeology, anthropology in the ways that I have over these past few years. It's interesting, when I first came to Las Vegas, and I had been a professor at Berkeley, a professor at San Jose State University, and I was in the university system basically teaching with New College. And New College was a new concept in education where you really get to know your professor. And we'd sit down on beanbags basically at Berkeley, near Strawberry Creek. And we just had this atmosphere of redwood trees, and you don't have fluorescent tubes in a classroom, and you really get to have a one-on-one with your professor. And I love that concept. I thought, wow, this is really the way I want to teach, because people are receptive. It's beautiful. There's redbirds flying around. There's a waterfall on Strawberry Creek. And literally, that's where I taught my classes, outside, sort of like the way that Buddha did, And we just had a blast. So when I left the Bay Area, and I left 20 years of living in San Francisco, in Noe Valley, and I would take the cable car every day to my classes that I was teaching at San Francisco State, and I'd take the Bay Area Rapid Transit over underneath the San Francisco Bay to Berkeley to teach. I was on the opera board. I was a very erudite, young man, and at Berkeley, scholastically, I was in the upper 1% of the upper 1%. I graduated with a 4.0, the salutarian of my class, summa cum laude. For 9 years of college, a 4.0. So I was really studying hard, working hard, doing all these papers. And because of that, I got to head off to India on a Fulbright. And this is in the 1960s, to my very first experience of being a field archaeologist. And so they basically asked me, well, where would you like to study? Where would you like to go first? And I said, it has to be to Valley of the Kings. And I am so interested in King Tut. And you can see here many of the books that, those are my diplomas behind me. And then these amazing books I've collected. I have a library here, over 10,000 books. So when I came to Las Vegas to live, I brought over 10,000 books with me, 7,000 movies and films, very unusual, collectible, amazing movies, all first edition books. And these are books that I have consulted in writing my written. So it was interesting. And, they just asked me on Hollywood Access. They said, well, we understand you're not just an actor, but you're balancing all of these careers. And I said, yeah, for years I've been doing that, a little bit schizophrenic maybe, because I was originally a child star in Hollywood. So at the age of 5, I was already on shows like Pinky Lee Show, tap dancing. I was making appearances on Gunsmoke. I was making appearances like on all of these TV shows like Lassie. I had been on The Mouseketeers. I was on Kids Say the Darndest Things, and I was a child star. They literally, people knew me as Kenny Castle, and I was out there as a big time tap dancer on a lot of shows, and also working for Disney on the stage and also in movies and Wonderful World of Color. And so I went from being a child star and basically, studying tap, my mother had me studying tap, studying piano, studying voice, studying violin. I mean, even I was with Smokey Stover, the Slingerland Drum Company, and learning how to read drum music off the walls. I was a really good drummer. A lot of people don't know this about me, but they would blindfold me and I would play with all these jazz groups as a little kid. So I was kind of out there as this like young Mozart, from the age of 3, 4, 5, playing, singing, tap dancing. I could do all of these things. And as time went on, my father said, well, I want you to get an education, pick something in the sciences. And so I said, archaeology. It has to be archaeology. And then I applied to the University of California, Berkeley, got in on scholastic and debate scholarship, which is quite rare. They don't give too many of those out. So I was really lucky. I got, my education paid for, headed off to the Bay Area, worked as a youth minister in a big downtown youth center for all the years I was basically in college, helping young people. And we were doing theater. So I had this church give me this big stage. And I'm like, okay, yes, I love that. I need a big stage, a huge auditorium with 2,000 seats. And I just started producing shows. And before I was 21 years old, I had written 18 musicals, Broadway musicals, that we performed on the stage, sometimes with a cast of 50 people. I did all the orchestrations, all the musical notes, all of that. So by the time I was 21, I had already been on PBS, on KQED, and, they saw me as this up-and-coming screenwriter, playwright, musical writer, conducting these orchestras with all these kids on stage singing from urban San Francisco. And what we did was amazing. My final play I did, Magic Reality, ended up on PBS across the United States. It was headed for Broadway. We did it on Off-Broadway. I mean, I had a whole summer of touring with an actual musical that I had written, conducting music, directing the musical. And so I was really deeply involved with theater, studying with the greats like Stuart Bennett. I worked with George Ball from American Conservatory Theater. And on Broadway in San Francisco, I did 2 seasons of The Mousetrap as Sir Christopher Wren. And I was also in Sondheim's A Winter's Tale. I had been on Broadway in New York City in Al Carmine's Wheels, and off-Broadway Pigs Can Fly, and tap dancing in The Boyfriend. So, I was really out there as a Broadway star, as a theater guy, also doing Waiting for Godot, doing Shakespeare. So I'm a classically trained actor, who trained at San Francisco at the American Conservatory Theater, and also an archaeologist. So the time came for me to do field archaeology, and I chose the tomb of King Tut. I was so interested in King Tut. And when I got to Valley of Kings in those days, it was really rough. I mean, there were tsetse flies, there were crocodiles in the Nile. You took your life in your hand. I basically went down the Nile, not in a floating Sheridan. I went on a felucca, which is a sailing ship with 8 Egyptian men who worked with me at the tomb. I knew Dr. Zalai Hawass his whole career. He and I are really dear friends. We go way back. We've done digs together. We've been at the Sphinx together. We've been at the pyramids together. And, just trying to paint that story of Egypt, to really look at it, see what we got right, see what we got wrong. And so I was asked by Hollywood Access, what contribution to the field of knowledge have you made as an archaeologist? And I would have to say was regarding King Tut. Because back in the 1960s, most of us were pretty well convinced that Tut had been murdered. He was 18 when he passed, and it was quite a shock. You can tell that's why his tomb was so small. They had to scramble. You only have 6 months to bury a king. That's it. So there was not time to build a tomb. He hadn't even thought about a tomb. People like Ramses, who lived to be in his 60s, he had 40 years to work on a magnificent tomb. Tut had nothing. So they basically buried him in one of his servants' tombs, which was, basically Tai was his vizier. And Tai oversaw his burial, put him in his personal tomb, thinking, now I will be pharaoh. I'll build a better tomb for myself, because he was quite of an advanced age. And I was rather shocked when I started looking at the information and everything in there. And now we have CT scanners. So I went to Egypt and put these through CAT scan. Was able to put them through CAT scan, the mummies. And when we put Tut through the CAT scan, it became very, very apparent that he had passed away from genetic defects, not from being murdered. And, the guy was not in great shape. He had tough, difficult walking. He always walked with a cane. He had webbed feet, club feet. He had very, very bad overbite. Nothing like the face on the mask that you see for Tut. He had an overbite. And other genetic birth defects, including an elongated head that was almost like a cone head. And this came from 4 generations of brothers and sisters who were having children. And so he was fourth generation of brothers and sisters from that dynasty having children. And he was born with genetic birth defects. And that's the reason why he only made it to the ripe old age of 18. It was the genetic birth defects that killed him. So that was part of what I contributed to the world of knowledge, because, I had enough sonography in me to be able to do the radiology and look and see on that skeleton, on what was left of that mummy, what actually happened to Tut. It was quite unfortunate, because when Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon discovered that tomb, they were so enthusiastic about all the gold in there. There were 7,000 pieces of gold, and we're talking 24 karat gold, right? So they're looking at these coffins and all these layers, some solid gold, and then that magnificent mask that probably has to be the best, mask in solid gold that we've ever found in history. It's absolutely stunning. And they were so enthusiastic about removing that and looking at it and preserving it in the museum that they actually severed the head of King Tut. So in those days, archaeology was quite invasive. They didn't realize they would just cut the linens away, and the Victorians actually had mummy unwrapping parties. So they were destroying these beautiful linens, these bandages that now are worth a fortune had they kept them intact. And now that we have CT scanning, we don't have to pull the mummies from their wrappings, savagely ravage a mummy. We can leave a mummy intact and we can see everything in there. And unfortunately, they pulled off King Tut's head. And I feel really sad that the goatee on the mask recently broke off in Berlin, being shown. They're ravaging these artifacts that have been in these tombs. The mummy of the pharaoh laying in peace for 4,000 years, then we go in and just ravage, unfortunately, these great, great artifacts. Another thing became very, very apparent to me, which was, why did Tut have so much bling? He was only 18 years old. He wasn't a really rich and great pharaoh like his grandfather, Amenhotep III. So Amenhotep III actually conquered all the way from Cairo to Damascus. That was all Egypt. All these conquered nations. He was a great general, amazing general with a huge empire and a huge kingdom. And one of the things he did after he conquered people, he would find their best artists, their best goldsmiths, their best creators and makers, and take them all back to be part of his, entourage that he had back at his palace. In those days, the big palace was in Thebes. So he would take all these people back to Thebes and then get them started on making stuff for him. So he had the best gold, the most beautiful necklaces, the most beautiful armbands, all of this bling, all of this beautiful stuff that was being created for him, right? And so Tut, suddenly I'm looking at these, hieroglyphs on these bracelets and these golden objects and looking at the cartouche of the king, the hieroglyphics in the cartouche. And one of the bracelets on King Tut's arm said, the wife of the king of two lands. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why would this guy be the wife of the king of two lands when he's obviously a male pharaoh? It makes no sense. And then you could see how he tried to put his cartouche over the top of that cartouche. And I realized, perhaps the greatest grave robber was Tut himself. He was actually going into the tombs of his ancestors and taking the best stuff for himself. He's a young guy, he's a teenager. This is bling, And he's walking around in these great pectorals in solid gold. The vulture, god Khufu, he's walking around with these huge golden, representations of Isis, Osiris, and Ptah. And the interesting thing is that the time when he inherited the kingdom from his father, Akhenaten had kind of cast out all the old gods and was basically just worshiping Aten, which is the sun. So he became a monogamist, and he became, somebody who is basically with one wife. That was Nefertiti. She was very, very beautiful, obviously. But they both believed in one God and the sun, worshiping the sun, and he set himself up as high priest. It was highly unpopular in Egypt because those people come from millions of gods, so they were a little upset that they could no longer worship Horus. They could no longer worship Isis or the god Ptah, or, go to Kamumbo and worship the crocodile god, Sobek. So, they were upset that he had changed the religion entirely. And when that pharaoh fell, they demolished, Tel El Amarna, which was the new capital. And they went back to Thebes, put King Tut on the throne. He was only 8 years old, and the priests came in and reopened all the temples, and his name changed from Tut Ankh Aten, right? Aten, which is the sun, to Tut Ankh Amun, for Amun-Ra. And so he reestablished all the gods. He started wearing all of Amenhotep's jewelry, his mask. The mask itself that is attributed to King Tut actually belonged to Nefertiti. When we looked really carefully, we found her cartouche that had been his mother's death mask, which he actually was stolen for his own death, probably by his wife, Akhenaten. So, it's just so interesting, the real story of history. And when you're an archaeologist, you just continue to uncover and uncover and uncover all these things. So you can kind of see a little bit the wildness of my life. I think in many ways, many people, call me the real Indiana Jones, because I'm still out there, at these archaeological digs around the world. I just got back from India from a fantastic archaeological dig with the Pandava dynasty and, discovering things. And here I am at 75, almost 76, still climbing through these pyramids, climbing through these tombs. And my students, like from UNLV, are pretty much in air-conditioned chambers, on drone technology. We have infrared ground scanning. We don't have to go out there and dig and dig and dig with all these mahouts every day carrying away the sand. They can just basically look and program, and they know exactly what is in those tombs. They know what's underneath the ground. It's a whole new world that we've uncovered in archaeology. It's just not the same thing. So they're in an air-conditioned chamber, and, I'll get a message on my phone saying, Dr. Castleer, I think there might be, a scorpion maybe 15 inches from your left elbow, so please be careful. I'm like, you guys realize I've been doing this 55 years. I'm not exactly scared of a scorpion. I've had, cobras that could kill me in 15 seconds right in front of my face. I've basically had, seen all kinds of things, including being chased by Kodo dragons. So My life has just been wild, but it's been a really great adventure. And that's why I just finished my most recent book, which is the Jazz of Archaeology, which was a lot of fun, where I told about, being on the Ganges, being in the Himalayas, being in the Forbidden City, and I'm listening to John Coltrane, right? Alice Coltrane, on my headset, Ornette Coleman, Rashawn Roland Kirk, Ornette Coleman, Yusef Lateef, I come out of the jazz era in the 60s, where in San Francisco, I was pretty much at the Keystone Corner every night, and I heard all these people play live. I became a close personal friend of the Coltranes and, really, really almost like a family member, and played with Alice on numerous albums that she did. I just was so fortunate to be alive when these great people were there. We headed off to India, 27 trips to India. I've met almost all of the greatest saints, from Sai Baba to the Guru of the Beatles, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. I was with A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the head guru of the Hare Krishna movement, and interviewed all these people to understand the movement during the 60s, where so many people turned to New Age and turned to a universal concept of religion based on Hinduism. So, I've just been through all these different eras. Lived in San Francisco during the time of AIDS, where almost 250 of my friends passed away from AIDS. And from that original group of people, I'm the last person left of all my friends. And just by some miraculous thing, I lived through COVID and, actually had it twice, from performing on the Strip. Almost everybody in my cast went down with it, survived that, only lasted 2 days with me. And I started the yoga centers on the Strip at Caesar's Palace, Mandarin Oriental, the Biltmore hotels. I was the first person to bring yoga as an amenity to the Las Vegas Strip to try to kind of balance all of the energy that's out there. And at 75, I'm still teaching yoga. I had just a wonderful experience in my life being a fashion model. So I first started modeling in 1972 for Gianni Versace. And then he was just a sportswear designer. At the time, he didn't even have his own label. And when he started Versace in 1978, I was the one model he took with him. And my agent in New York had said at Roman Models, he said, well, your career's going to last. When you're 28, it'll all be over. And just 2 days ago, I modeled at Alexander McQueen. So I can't believe, that I've had this just wondrous life that just seems to get better and better. I seem to get better and better with age. And I think I really wanted to share that with all of you young people out there. Because in a world that tells you, after you're 30, you're discarded. After you're 30, there's just nothing interesting left about you. Well, I'm that one person you can think of. And I have so many people say, I want to be you, Doc, when I grow up. And I think that's maybe a good thing to put out there, that you don't have to grow old. It's just a concept in your mind is age. And we can literally position ourselves with like a really, really great positive and upward attitude where you don't have the manifestations of old age. You just keep getting better and feel better and have more fun and do more things so that you have a really long and productive life. So I just want to say that to you out there. Don't give up hope. And don't give up the faith that you can't live a great life. And if you are living a life, and to some of those people my age who, you get to be in your 70s, and my mother always said, well, when you get to be 70, all of the previous bad things you did, too many trips to ice cream parlor, too much sugar in your diet, too many, Pepsis or colas in your diet, it catches up with you when you're 70, and then you get a lot of manifestations of weird stuff, depending on how good your lifestyle, your diet, all of those. And that's an important thing to consider, because nobody really tells you that when you're young, that now is the time to start a healthy lifestyle. Now is the time to really work out and control your weight and try to eat, naturally, just as natural as you can. And if you do those things and you do yoga, you do meditation, then you can end up, being like a rock star as you depart this world. As you get older, when you get into your golden years, you're still good to go. I can still travel. I'm in 3 shows on the Strip where I tap dance. I'm in 8 reality shows. I've written 5 books. I'm still teaching at the university, and every day is a fantastic adventure for me in art, design, dance. All of these things I'm still doing. I'm living this really rich life. And I think it's because I really lived with moderation. I'm not saying be a prude, but I just walked that middle path like Lord Buddha, in between extreme behavior. And I always just try to control my diet, control my partying, control my drinking,